What's up, college football addicts? Today we're going to talk about the gut-wrenching changes that are taking place in college football. Specifically, we're going to dive into the insane changes that were just announced regarding the Big Ten and the SEC. And we're going to talk about how those changes threaten to completely crush the ACC and the Big 12. Now, for those of you who may have missed it yesterday, Yahoo Sports' Ross Dellinger announced that the college football playoff is nearing a finalized agreement for its future. The ACC and Big 12 presidents voted to adopt a new framework, including a revenue model and playoff format. This presidential vote is significant as a milestone, especially from leagues that were initially resistant, and it also marks a crucial step towards an agreement, with the votes being unanimous. Now, the College Football Playoffs Management Committee, including 10 FBS conference commissioners and Notre Dame's AD, is set to meet soon to potentially finalize the college football playoffs future from 2026 on. Now, during this meeting, all 10 conferences are expected to commit to a new framework. This will include a revenue distribution model, a playoff format, and a governance structure, again, with Notre Dame in support. But what makes this meeting so interesting is how disproportionate the revenue sharing is. The proposed revenue model heavily favors the Big Ten and the SEC, who are expected to earn about 58% of the college football playoffs base distribution from a new ESPN contract, which is worth $1.3 billion annually. That starts in 2026. Let me explain what this means in actual numbers. The distribution difference between the SEC and the Big Ten and the ACC and the Big 12 and the Group of Five could exceed $300 million. The Power Two potentially could earn over $750 million more, $375 million apiece. To break this down on a team-by-team level, you could approximately see that the SEC and Big Ten schools potentially earn an extra $20 million range per team, while the ACC and Big 12 schools would only earn between about $12 or $13 million. On the bright side, for the ACC and the Big 12, there are some good things coming out of this agreement. Before I get to those, do me a quick favor and hit that subscribe button. If you're enjoying our college football playoff and conference realignment content, we're going to continue bringing that to you. May have something pretty big on the ACC that drops very soon, if not tomorrow. So as far as that goes, make sure that you're part of the channel so you don't miss it. Now, as far as the good things that come out of this for the ACC and the Big 12, for one, the latest proposal eliminates the concept of earning revenue through participation and advancement. They focus instead on base revenue distribution, which largely based on the history of playoff success. The winners aren't going to take the lion's share of the revenue. The ACC and the Big 12 and others will get money just because they exist. It won't be because they're winning championships. That's probably a good thing, because I don't know how many of those teams are going to continue to compete for and win championships. Also, the SEC and the Big Ten have agreed to scrap the 2 guaranteed first-round buys and only accept 1 auto bid per conference. Also, it's worth noting that going down to fewer auto bids actually helps the SEC and the Big Ten more than it hurts them, based on the evidence of the past decade. As we told you guys recently, the SEC and the Big Ten's secret goal in all of these negotiations was to eliminate auto bids and just have the highest 14 teams ranked, which would kill the ACC and the Big 12 based on the prior several years' worth of evidence. The contract will also include a look-in provision for reevaluating the revenue distribution and the format in 2028 or earlier if triggered by conference realignment, when the ACC inevitably implodes. Now, the future playoff format will guarantee spots for the champions of the 4 major conferences, the highest-ranked Group of 5 champion, with Notre Dame receiving its own protections. In my opinion, this is the best that the ACC and the Big 12 could have hoped for. What they have to protect against is eventually their conference being non-existent. Because as the ACC continues to lose any kind of standing. As Clemson and Florida State, UNC, Miami, and others are potentially leaving, their value goes down and down and down. Does the Big 12 rob some of their schools so that they can continue to at least get a small payout and still be relevant in the landscape of things? I think so. I think your big dogs are going to end up in the SEC and the Big 10. We know that. But then what does the Big 12 do? Do they start to snatch more from the ACC? Do they start to take some of those Tier 2 teams to bring about the ACC's demise? Do they merge with the ACC? Basically save them in a Big 12 ACC combination that brings in even more money for them. What's this mean for college football at the end of the day? Well, I honestly think that the train has already left the building on competitive balance due to NIL. Between NIL and this new college football playoff information that's come out, I think that you will never see competitive balance in college football again. NIL is probably 80% of the problem, and the financial disparity is likely the other 20%. And I want to be clear here. I have no real problem with NIL and players getting paid, and I don't think you can put this genie back into the bottle. Recently, Senator Ted Cruz held a roundtable where Nick Saban, Jim Phillips, and numerous others came to beg Congress to step in and do something about NIL and about competitive imbalance. The problem is I've yet to hear a single thing that can be done. I want to be clear about this. Congress can give colleges an exemption from making players employees, and they can give them an antitrust exemption. And the teams can agree to share TV network revenue and give every player the same amount. And they can pass stricter NIL rules. But what they absolutely will never be able to do is to make all the teams pay players the same NIL. Just like they can't make colleges pay coaches the same amount. And as long as there are some NILs worth 10 times what others are, there will always be a huge competitive imbalance. Multiple courts, including the Supreme Court, have ruled that the market determines individual players' name, image, and likeness value. And individual players have a right to earn different amounts based on those values. So do you see the problem here? Short of implementing some form of communism, like all NIL is divided equally among the remaining Power 4 teams, which would certainly be overturned in the courts, there is nothing that can be done to stop NIL. To stop the NIL imbalance, Congress would have to not only pass antitrust exemptions, they would have to pass legislation that they know would be overturned. And they can squawk and talk all they want, but I don't see that happening. There is a reason they haven't leaked the proposed bill at all. And that's because the moment they do, the pitchforks are coming out. Congress can't solve NIL. So what you are likely going to end up with is a system like the NFL, where there is a salary cap on TV revenue sharing with the players, and all players are getting paid equally out of it. And on the flip side, individual players will still be able to sign NIL deals of differing values. And just like in the NFL, Pat Mahomes may be worth $40 million, while Russell Wilson may only be worth $5 million. As far as what I think, you could potentially get to a place where you implement a draft, I guess, out of high school, and that can get rid of some of it, and everyone plays under the same salary cap. But I just don't foresee that being a realistic possibility anytime soon. You can still have, with your transfer rules, kids going wherever they want by year 2. You can still have enticements based on NIL. You can basically do whatever you want because the genie is completely out of the bottle. And I don't ever see a way that you get the lid back on. I don't ever see a way that you change this around. And at this point, that's where we are. They provided a fake solution with NIL. And hear me out. I think it's great that the players finally can earn revenue. I think it's great the players can finally earn money. But they provided a fake situation for NIL, and they let NIL be what saved them millions of dollars now. And now that genie is never going back in the bottle. You're never going to get to a situation where you can get rid of that. Whereas if you would have just paid them from the start, if you would have just done what was right and shared the revenue with them years ago, a decade ago, you wouldn't be in this situation today. Now, would NIL have grown? Would things outside of that have grown? Possibly. Would we have possibly gotten to the same point? Maybe. But if you wouldn't have put it onto booster collectives and you wouldn't have put it onto NIL and you wouldn't have put it onto everything else and you would have just done the right thing from the start, we wouldn't be here today. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I don't foresee a situation outside of a draft where you can lock guys into 3 or 4 year contracts out of high school where you could ever truly get rid of this. And with the transfer rules that I don't think are ever going back, even the draft out of high school would not matter that much because guys could just transfer after year 1. And that is what would happen. I don't know how they ever get this thing back under control. I don't know what they ever end up doing. Competitive imbalance will be what this sport is for the rest of eternity. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Again, make sure you're subscribed. We've got some good stuff coming out on the ACC very soon. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to College Football Addiction.